The Lost Sister of Groningen, a novel by Nell Jones. Chapter, Little Europe, read by Nell Jones. As they alighted from the train in Albury, Annika could not believe how cold it was. She was stunned. It was like Holland, so bitterly cold. She knew it was the middle of Australia's winter, but to her, Australia was supposed to be a hot place. She couldn't understand it. Climbing aboard the waiting bus to take them on their little road trip, which would bring them to their beds, she watched carefully from the window as they moved out into the darkness. The bus ride from Albury didn't take too long. As everyone climbed down from the bus, people started commenting to one another about how surprised they were to see soldiers outside the camp. "It's like Europe again," she heard someone say. But for Annika, it was the most exciting thing she'd ever done. On arrival, they were told refreshments were to be given, and her family would be allocated some supplies for their cabins. Herman had to line up with their papers. Kobe and she could go straight to the dining room, a friendly woman told them in the German language. Other people looked around and started to worry. They were saying it was a little uncomfortable. People were concerned. "Why are the people so upset, Kobe?" she asked. "Well, after the beautiful holiday we had on the boat, perhaps some people don't know what to think here," she whispered. "Some of these people probably had a hard time in the war. You know all about the Germans in the camps. It's not so long ago. Some people are still angry about that. They don't want to hear the German language." "But nobody will hurt us here, will they?" "Oh no, darling. Dutch people just like to complain, that's all," she whispered again, and they both laughed. "Like when we had the sandwiches off the train," she whispered to Kobe. Kobe smiled and nodded. They found the dining room and the two of them sat down. Annika ate a banana as Edward sat on her knee. "Drink up, darling," Kobe said. She was tired and wanted to sleep. Shortly, Herman came back and joined them. "Well, girls, we've been allocated Block 17. Don't know where it is, but we better go and find out what our first bed in Australia is like. I'll carry Edward, Kobe." They were given an allocation of linen, blankets, crockery and cutlery. Herman explained that each block would have a day to put the washing in and change their sheets and towels over. Annika couldn't believe how everything was free. "Really, we don't have to wash?" "No, but we have to wash ourselves and our own clothes. We must serve ourselves and wash up our own plates, though, in the big kitchen," he added. "It's better than the orphanage, Annika. What do you think?" "Oh, yes, Herman, it sure is." They quietly walked around the camp. It was pitch dark. "Can't wait to see what it's like in the morning, can you?" Annika said excitedly. "Remember what I told you, Annika, about the wildlife, okay? Don't wander too far away until we know what is here. I am your guardian, and we don't want you eaten up by kookaburras." Everyone laughed. Annika skipped along, smiling. "Here it is, Kobe." They opened the door. "Well, we'll have to do some work on it, sure, but it's all right for now." Their accommodation had 2 rooms and 3 iron beds, a table and some chairs. "Oh, the mattresses are lumpy, Kobe," Annika laughed, "and the blankets are ugly." They all laughed again. They didn't seem to mind. "Well, it's not forever, Mooey, and we've had worse, yes," Kobe said, ruffling Annika's hair. "Come on, let's get some things out and have a sleep. In the morning we can set everything up." The rooms were very small and the walls paper thin. Sometimes you could see your neighbour's bed. There wasn't any heating in the small hut, and the grey blankets on their iron beds were thin army issue. They settled into their new rooms that night. Their bags were there waiting for them in their new country, and they slept sound and happy in their choice. The next morning, Annika was woken by the golden light of warmth that streamed into her window. She rose quietly, put on her slippers, and closed the door gently behind her. She wanted to explore her new home, but boy, was it crisp. No one was around to hear the loud singing creatures that she could not see. It was her very own world this morning, and everything excited her senses. Bonagilla, on first impression, was a strange and golden place, a yellow country. She could see a large dam in the distance, full of so much water that she felt like she was back in Holland. Yellow trees, yellow hills wrapped themselves around the camp like dormant bodies. She saw trees of soaring beauty, trees that sculptured themselves into the landscape sky with such strange clouds in the background. They were taller than Dutchmen. Annika lay down on the soft grass and wondered what this new land would bring her. She watched the clouds making funny faces at her on the ground. Large ants crawled around her, making their homes busily. She felt like the ants. She sat up and looked back towards the green huts with the brown doors, where her sister lay sleeping. Finally, everybody would be happy. Kobe would forget about John from Texel. As she lay back into the grass, the big blue sky was the cornflower field in Delft. She saw the clouds dancing carefully, but in harmony with the yellows and the blues of the landscape. Although different in hue, the deep yellows against the trees and the clouds somehow connected her with the fields of Holland. Yes, this made her feel the same. She was home. She was safe. The golden curved hills and speckled tall trees sat quietly while everyone else was asleep. The purple carpet flowers she saw in the distance weren't a curse. Someone on the train had told her that these flowers were called Patterson's curse, that they were a weed. How could anything so beautiful be a weed? Unable to resist the rhythm of the trees' tango, Annika sprung up and ran towards the beckoning daylight. As she skipped along, breathing in the smells of her new land, she thought of Mother and Father. Would they be thinking of her? Yellow grass, sometimes blue hills and then yellow hills, strange laughing birds flying over, so many black and white birds swooping down overhead, singing their song. Were they singing for her today? She'd heard about the spiders and snakes. The loud possums jumping on the roof all last night kept her awake, but she knew she was going to love it here. Besides, it wouldn't be long before they would have jobs and a new school and a new home. It was a wide country, and so far she'd seen many things. The dead trees from the train and the sheep stuck in her mind. She circled gaily, her body light on the breeze, her arms opened, and she looked to the sky. The bright colours of this sky looked different from any other sky she'd ever seen. This was what God had meant, she thought. Bright yellow flowers bloomed everywhere. She was home. She ran back to the barracks, heady with excitement, and woke Kobe to tell her of everything she'd seen. Later on, they went over and had their breakfast in the big hall. Bacon, eggs and bread were served with endless coffee. But the butter was funny, and so was the coffee, Kobe said. After breakfast, Herman showed them all where the bathrooms were. Bathroom? I don't think you can call them that, Kobe said. Have you seen anything like it, Herman? It's from 100 years ago. Look, no doors on the cubicles. It's like a chicken coop. What about the toilet, Herman? Annika asked. Well, follow me and you'll be even more surprised. Kobe and Annika found the ladies' toilet, and Annika ran outside laughing. It's a big hole in the ground with a wooden seat. It's not normal, said Kobe. What have we been brought to? She added. Oh, don't worry, Kobe. We won't be here long. I have to go to the employment office, and you should take Annika to the school. She can learn English, Herman suggested. Okay, Herman, Annika replied. Let's all go to school. Later that morning, Kobe and Herman received £50 from the government, with some child endowment pay to help towards their resettlement into their new country. This was the most anyone had given them ever. What a wonderful life they were going to have, Annika thought. Throughout the day, she discovered that Bonagilla had a school, a library, a wonderful canteen, a butcher, a barber, a police station, and 3 banks. It was like a small town. Thousands of people lived here from all over the world. The children had x-rays on arrival and went to English classes. The adults could watch movies in the big hall. Information was given to them about their new country and what to expect. But the best bit was that everyone helped you. Kobe laughed with her new neighbours at about how lumpy the mattresses were. But for her and her family, anything was better than the life they'd had in Holland, she told them. Things would be better when they had employment. Her neighbours told them that everyone was very helpful in the camp, even though it was a bit primitive and the mutton a bit tiresome. But you shouldn't worry because we're Aussies now. She'll be right, mate, they said, and all laughed. But Kobe was having doubts. Should she tell Herman about her plans? She thought she should wait a little longer. Many other Dutch people complained about everything, the huts, the food, the cold, and sometimes the heat. For Annika, this new world was exciting. She made many friends and enjoyed the games and parties in the reception centre. She loved playing outside and looking after Edward, and the playground was a huge attraction for all the children, and they soon resumed the games of old that they'd played aboard the Shabayak. Wooden playing frames were popular with the children because they'd never seen them in Holland before. Playing on the seesaw with her friends was Annika's favourite pastime, until one day her friend had jumped off too quickly. At the other end, Annika fell to the ground, gasping for breath, so terribly winded, Kobe told her later. Somehow she stood up, but the feelings of old came back to her, and she felt frightened again, like when she was in the orphanage. Her breath was not there. Her breath was knocked out of her. She reached out for Kobe with a kind of despair when the children brought her over to her. Kobe reassured her and told her to breathe. She never sat on that seesaw again. It was a strange episode under the colours of the sky. After a few weeks, Herman had been offered a job. It seemed the Lindfelds were going to move to South Australia to a city called Adelaide. Herman had always wanted to go there, he told Kobe. Herman was very happy. They'd spent 2 months at Bonagilla by now, and finally they could leave and earn some extra money to get their own place. They'd be housed in another hostel for a while, but it was a job and some security for them all. They were back on the train to Melbourne and then across to Adelaide by bus. This time, home was near a beach called Glenelg. A few weeks later, just as they were getting settled and organised, everything was turned upside down again. Annika came home from her English classes to find a note on her bed. The letter was addressed to her and Herman. She didn't want to open it. It was John Texel, she knew it. Perhaps this was what all the strange moods were about. She dared not open it. She looked at the clock. She'd better wait the 20 minutes until Herman returned from work. "What's wrong, Annika? You don't look well," Herman asked as he threw his bag down onto the floor. "This letter, Herman. I found a letter here on the bed," and she thrust it into his hands. As Herman read through the pages, Annika saw how Herman's face changed colour. He grew angry and crushed the paper into his fist, hurling the note at the wall. "What does it say, Herman?" she asked, quickly moving to pick it up. She unravelled it cautiously. Kobe had only left words. Kobe was sorry, but she had to leave. Leave? She no longer could pretend she was happy with them all, and she'd moved back to Melbourne. She could not take Edward with her. She would come back for Annika and Edward when she could, she explained, but she could not take them for now. Where she was going, children could not come, it said. John had jumped ship and they wanted to be together. Annika sat down on the bed, bewildered. What was she to do? Why had her sister done this? What would happen to her now? Was Herman going to look after her now? She started to cry, and so did Herman. She'd come halfway round the world to be dumped again, but this time she had no real family to go to. "What are we going to do, Herman?" "Don't worry, Annika, we'll get her back," he said, trying to console her. That night, they both silently cried themselves to sleep. In the morning, they ate their breakfast, their eyes swollen with despair. Herman told Annika not to worry and not to tell anyone. He tried to reassure her that everything was going to work out. After breakfast, he helped her get ready for school and went off to work. At lunchtime, when Annika returned from classes, she found another note sitting on her bed, but this time it was addressed to her. "Annika, I have left to find Kobe. I'll be back as soon as I can. Please look after Edward. Herman." Reading that note over and over, the words mixed with tears and confusion, she lay on her bed and looked to the wall and to the note. She was there again, alone, in the orphanage, lost, her body numb. She held on to her breath until she felt nothing.